There we go. Oh, it works. Oh, I love it. Tonight we're going to be doing just a short little reaction stream for my first ever stream. You stream a lot there, but you know, that's how it goes. Here is the backstory for this. About a week or two ago, I found this video by the YouTuber ModernGurlz, ending with a Z, called Disney's Adorkable Problem, with a funny face emoji in it. And it's all about Disney princesses and the trend of their modern princesses and how they've been quirky, I guess. And I watched it through like twice on my own, and I have a lot of thoughts. So this isn't meant to be an attack against ModernGurlz. I think some of their other work is pretty good. I haven't watched a lot of their channel. I'm not subscribed, but I think a lot of their other work is probably pretty good. This is just meant to be basically a discussion on their own thoughts and process on Disney's modern heroines and the issues I have with their arguments, basically. This isn't, you know, a hate campaign. It's just me sharing my thoughts on someone's video. I've seen the channel before, and I don't think they're they're not reactionary. They're definitely not. Definitely not anti-woke grifter. They are, I think they've said they're, yeah. I mean, they do a lot of Disney videos. They do a lot of fashion videos. I think her pronouns are she, her. But they do a lot, and, you know, I watched a bit of their Lilo and Stitch thing, and it's like, yeah, same bestie. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with them. I just don't like, so hard finding good critique of Disney from someone who loves older Disney on YouTube. It's all grifters. Yeah, a lot of it is those right-wing reactionary grifters, and you know, there is a lot to be said about Disney in general. Obviously, I've talked about Disney before, and I will be talking about Disney again. I'm trying not to be a Disney channel, but you know, they're an animation god, basically. So, like, of course I'm going to talk about them. I don't remember where I was going at that point. With my reaction streams, I don't want to also be like the type of person who just, sits and watches a video and just lets it play. I did pre-watch this video, and I do want to try to do that if I do other reaction streams in the future, just because if you can't tell by how I am right now, I am very disorganized without having a list of talking points. So I do have some talking points I want to specifically get to, but if I have any other thoughts or opinions that suddenly pop up in the watching of this 15-minute video, then I will probably share them as well. I guess, let's see if I can do audio balancing correct real quick. I did not hear a single thing. Oh, that's because I have the tab muted.
Modern heroines. If you're familiar with this channel, then you already know that I sort of have a love-hate relationship with Disney.
And I mean, first of all, don't we all have a love-hate relationship? The first argument ModernGurlz tries to make that I want to talk about is in regard to some of the responses from her original tweet. Not really related to Disney princesses as a whole, but I still want to talk about it.
On one hand, I have an immense amount of respect for what the company has done for the animation industry, and there's no denying that they've made some extraordinary films. But on the other hand, in recent years, capitalism seems to be dictating the vast majority of their decisions, as opposed to sheer creativity and passion.
And doesn't capitalism just ruin everything?
The defenders of Disney fell into one of three camps. The first group insisted that there was in fact no recurring.
Okay, I do want to pause here to just look over some of these responses for this first group here, because I think this is where I personally fit in regards to responding to this. There are a lot of different female characters named here, and they do have a really good point. I mean, Raya and Mirabel are not the same character. And, you know, if we can add them to, Elsa and Anna are definitely not adorkable. Though I did notice when watching this video, for some reason, all of these, like, Moana, Raya, Elsa, Merida, Anna, why do they all end with A? Mirabel doesn't, but why do most of these end with A? Is it like, what is with that? But yeah, I agree with some of these takes that are being flashed on screen right now. If we are counting all the modern Disney heroines that have been released in the last few years, they don't really have the same personalities. They're not quote unquote the adorkable characters. Yeah, I just think this is a really weird point, because no, these responses do have a fair argument to be made here, and this is basically my argument too. Yeah, Vanellope acts less adorkable and more childish because she is a child. That's something that I think goes on in the later part of the video. It's like, yeah, some of these characters are childish. First of all, this is kids media. It makes sense for the kids to be more, or not the kids, the characters to be more childish and kid-friendly so the kids can relate better. But also, like, Vanellope is literally like, first of all, she's a video game character, so she doesn't have an age, but she's like 9 or 10 years old, you know?
The second questioned why I cared at all, considering Disney movies are for kids.
I think it is perfectly fine to care about media made for kids. I mean, actually all of the videos I've made on this channel have been about kids media so far. I do plan on doing some more, I don't want to call them mature, but more, I guess, adult-oriented media. Like, I have a video about Frankenstein in the works. I have videos about Only Murders in the Building in the works. I've got videos for other adult media in the works too, but I think it's okay to be passionate for kids media because, you know, kids are our future, and I don't know if this is a hot take or what, but kids deserve good media. I don't know why this is just like such a hot take for some people. It's okay to care about kids movies as long as you have a balanced media diet.
Let's get into it.
Yes, let's get into it. ModernGurlz then goes on to talk about the Disney Renaissance princesses, and honestly, for the most part, I can kind of agree with her. Except
The entire brand has effectively been built on the backs of their female characters, with
Yeah.
1937's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs jump-starting their fairy tale empire. And as the years have gone by, with the female characters all sharing a similar desire for more out of life, which just so happened to mirror third-wave feminist movements of the time period. Ariel wants to learn more about the world. Belle wants more than a provincial existence. Jasmine wants to be more than a princess. Esmeralda wants more respect for herself and her people. See what I mean?
that is actually a really good argument. I don't know if Esmeralda and Jasmine really fit into this wanting more out of their life. I haven't seen these movies in a while, so I really can't say anything for certain, and don't quote me on anything, but I feel like wanting to be more than a princess and wanting more respect for herself and her people, they kind of fit, but they just feel like a little awkwardly thrown in at the end there. But that's just my opinion. The Disney princesses are a lot more nuanced than people give them credit for. Yes, Paper Malagor guy. Yes, Paper. Yes, I agree 100%. They are a lot more nuanced than people give them credit for. I will always and forever be number one defender of Cinderella. She gets so much hate for just wanting to go to a party and finding a man in the process. Like, she didn't go to the ball to find someone to marry and get her out of her sucky life. She just wanted to go party for a night. Everything that happened after that is completely unrelated. Well, it's related to the ball, but it's unrelated to her being a weak character. And she's strong in her own way. I think a lot of modern discourse about Disney princesses of the old days, like Cinderella and Snow White, a lot of their modern discourse about them being weak is kind of just a weak argument on its own, because these characters were strong characters. They just weren't strong in the way we see strength today. Like, Cinderella was always kind. Snow White was always kind and patient, you know? And I don't know, maybe it's just our society values kindness less, but they are a lot more nuanced, and I will forever defend the old Disney princesses, because they get a lot more hate than they deserve.
Which made them easily identifiable role models that meshed well with Disney's pre-existing brand identity. However, and here's where modern Disney could learn a thing or two, that's pretty much where the comparisons end. And while their positive attributes took notes from Disney's You Go Girl formula, it was
You
their
go, girl.
negative personality traits that helped make them distinct. Ariel is naive and mischievous, while Jane is prissy and eccentric.
Okay, 2 points here. One, you could argue that this trend of overlapping character traits is also happening with this Adorkable trend too. Why can we have overlap with personality traits be okay for Disney Renaissance characters, but not their modern characters? Sure, it's fine for all these characters to be kind and independent, but when they start sharing a same sense of humor, that's where we draw the line. I just don't think this argument is that strong. And I also wouldn't say eccentric is a negative personality trait, or if Jane is really that eccentric, but I also haven't seen Tarzan in a long time, so I can't really say more than that. Also, Ariel was already passionate about the human world before she even saw Eric. Also, Eric is a sweetheart and really loves her for her even without her voice. Yes, 100%. Yeah, Ariel was already like pretty hyper-focused and super obsessed with the human world before she saved Prince Eric. I think she would have done whatever it took to go be where humans are, and I love that for her. Eric is just a sweetheart who falls in love with this girl who can't really talk very well and loves her even without her voice. And I think it's just a sweet love story. And then ModernGurlz gets into her biggest argument yet, discussing the flaws of the Disney Renaissance characters and comparing them to the modern characters. And I have a lot of thoughts.
Flaws, making the characters relatable to their similarly imperfect audience, it also had the added benefit of making their challenges and eventual growth unique to them. Disney's modern heroines are severely lacking in this department, with the vast majority sharing the same generically adorkable personality.
No, I'm just gonna come out here and say no. Actually, hold on. Let me see if I can pull this up right. Here we go. I made a PowerPoint presentation to refute this point because I think the modern Disney characters do have negative traits in their personality, and I can't believe that I'm actually going to have to defend Raya and the Last Dragon in this because I really did not like this movie. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. There we go. Rapunzel. She is naive. She is overly trusting, and she's a little impulsive. But that can kind of be, the naive and overly trusting can be related to her upbringing being, locked in a tower for almost 18 years of her life. Moving on to Anna, the next Disney princess, who is also naive. She's also a little impulsive and overly idealistic. But it makes sense for her and Rapunzel to have similar personality traits, even negative ones, because they had a pretty similar upbringing where they were both raised isolated. So both of these characters being socially awkward makes sense. And I think Anna is definitely a lot more impulsive than Rapunzel is in their respective film. Anna wants to marry a man she just met the day of Elsa's coronation. She also decides, without any proper clothing, to go after her sister in like a dead winter storm. She's very impulsive. I love her for it. Frozen is a lot better than people give it credit for, but not as good as the marketing did. Moving on to Moana, who is, unlike the others, not really all that quirky. I wonder why. She is headstrong, reckless, and stubborn. Moana, on the other hand, had a very different backstory. She's being raised to be a chief of her people, so it makes sense that she's headstrong and reckless and stubborn. I think right. Now, you've got me defending Raya and the Last Dragon. Can't believe this. So, Raya. I don't know, is she a Disney princess? I guess she's technically a princess. Raya. She is distrustful, she is guarded, she is pretty cynical. Like you said earlier, Paper, with the male characters in Disney films being overly cynical, I think Raya fits into that category pretty well too. Her movie was not the best. There were some really pretty animated shots I can give it credit for, but I did not like the story or the themes of this movie, and I really didn't like Raya herself all that much, but that's, mostly my own opinion there talking. Oh, I can use the scroll wheel on my mouse. Mirabel Madrigal. I know she's not technically a princess, but she's one of the modern heroines, and she's still talked about a lot in this video. And Mirabel also has that similar quirky humor to Rapunzel and Anna, but where the difference comes is that she's a little more, I don't know if these words are the right words to try to describe what I'm trying to explain. She's definitely more anxious and overcompensating because she lives in a family where everyone has a magical gift except her, so she's always trying to be seen by her family, and that can come off in a very anxious and overcompensating and kind of self-sacrificial way. I mean, at the very climax of Encanto, which, spoilers by the way if you haven't seen Encanto yet, her trying to get the miracle candle before the house falls down around her is a little self-sacrificial, because she might not have known if she was going to survive that or not, but her family meant more to her than herself. And I think that's a good and bad negative trait, if that makes any sense. And okay, so I haven't seen Wish yet, so Asha might be the only actually adorkable Disney heroine on this list. I don't intend to see Wish anytime soon, unless, I don't know, you guys really want me to. It doesn't seem like a really good movie from what I've seen of the reviews. I think she kind of falls into it just based on the trailers that I've seen, which kind of sucks because this is it was Disney's 100th movie. They could have let the animators put a little more effort into the story, but that's neither here nor there. Asha is annoyingly adorkable, yes. From what I've seen of the reviews, she seems to be a little annoying. And I think I have one more slide. Yes. So I will give ModernGurlz the credit here. If anyone deserves the quirky descriptor, it's these three technically, but again, they all have reasons to be quote-unquote quirky or socially awkward, because I saw Wish, but I can't confirm she is mostly she is in the trailer for the whole movie. Okay, that's great. We're gonna skip ahead a bit and talk a bit more about Vanellope from Wreck-It Ralph.
Vanellope von Schweetz from 2012's Wreck-It Ralph, and Anna from 2013's
I'm sorry, I'm just reading the subtitles. Vanellope von Schweetz from 2010's Wet Ralph.
Albeit, in Vanellope's case, it's dialed up to 1,000.
Like I said earlier in this, before we even really started getting into this video, Vanellope is like 9 or 10 years old at oldest. She is a child. She is going to be childish. She is going to be immature because she is a child. She doesn't really fit the adorkable thing. Like, she is adorable. She is, I guess, kind of a bit of a dork with quirky humor, but the reason it's dialed up to 1,000, like you argue, is because she is a child from a video game about sugar and sweets. She's going to be a child. And then ModernGurlz makes an argument about Moana and Judy, and I just have to... Okay, just hear this.
In 2016, Disney released Zootopia and Moana, with both films featuring the goofy protagonists that were beginning to define the brand.
What? I would not say Moana is goofy. Yes, Moana is more grounded, and the same goes for Judy. But they're not, like, quirky adorkable. They just because comedy exists in these films does not mean they're all quirky girl protagonists. It just means there's comedy. There's an argument later on here that I'm just going to discuss now because I want to. Judy does have some naivete to her, like Anna and Rapunzel do, but any person moving from the country to a big city would have a bit of that at first. Yes, Judy is not goofy either. I think one of the big problems that ModernGurlz is having here is the difference between comedy and quirkiness. I think that's the big thing that she is conflating here. They are animated films for kids, so having comedy in them makes sense, but also they can be serious too. Like, they can both exist at the same time. Gigi's story is more fish out of water. Yeah, more fish out of water, definitely. That's a better way to describe it, because she's grounded, she's cunning, she's smart. She just doesn't know 100% how Zootopia, the city, works, but she learns pretty quickly, I think.
Moana even getting the same klutzy joke as Rapunzel at one point.
Because it's a callback, it's a throwback, it is a Easter egg. That's the point of that joke. Haha, remember when Rapunzel did this? Moana did it too. And also, Moana doesn't have experience on boats, so of course she would be clumsy with some of the stuff on the boats. Or ships. I can't remember if they're called boats or ships in the film. ModernGurlz brings up the quirkiness again here, and honestly, I have a lot more thoughts than you'd think. And honestly, I have a lot of thoughts.
With director Jared Bush describing her as, quote, imperfect and weird and quirky. So don't even try arguing with me about lumping her in the adorkable category.
I won't argue with you about that. Mirabel is quirky and weird, but you don't explore the reasons why she is that way in your argument. Mirabel is the black sheep in the family, the only Madrigal without a gift. In a family of extraordinary people, Mirabel is uncharmingly ordinary, so she's tried to learn some skills to make up for that. And yeah, oh goodness, we're gonna talk about Raya and the Last Dragon again.
Similar to Judy and Moana, there's a maturity to her that makes her quirkiness significantly less obvious than the rest.
Okay. First of all, hold on. I'm skipping frame by frame because I want to get to that one frame. I do love that hair flip though. That's very sassy. This right here, she is a child here. I don't think that argument works for the larger argument because this is not the character we follow throughout the film. This is a character we follow throughout the film. This is a character we follow throughout the film. She's not quirky. She is definitely not. We are going back to the slides because I have more to say. We are going back to the slides because I think the big issue ModernGurlz is having between the characters here is quirky humor versus slapstick. And I have definitions for this. And yes, Sisu is way more quirky than Raya. 100% agree paper. Let's look at what I'm going to define as quirky humor. Quirky humor is reliant on being either self-deprecating or self-referential. Anna getting engaged to Hans at the start of Frozen and Elsa's reaction of, you can't marry a man you just met. This is the hashtag relatable humor. And it tries way too hard to be humor. Tries way too hard to be humor. It does try way too hard to be humorous, and it also tries way too hard to be relatable. I haven't seen all of Wish, but I have seen this in the trailer. Asha being out of breath at the start of the Welcome to Roses song because she's running. That is quirky humor. It is reliant on being self-deprecating, self-referential, and trying way too hard to be funny. On the other hand, there is modern slapstick. Slapstick humor is featured a lot in cartoons, but it's like funny faces, visual gags, etc. I'm using a very loosey-goosey definition here to try to make my point. So funny faces, visual gags, etc. That's kind of what I'm going to define as modern slapstick in this argument here. In 3D CGI animation, it can look a little funky or uncanny just due to the realistic textures and slightly realistic face proportions. Moana versus the Kakamora scene. It is action-based, but it is also comedic. They're coconut pirates. Moana's reaction of them being coconut makes sense as modern slapstick. It's not quirky, it's just a funny moment. Raya eating food on Bone's boat. It is exaggerated facial expressions. That's what brings the humor because honestly, Raya is just a buzzkill the whole movie, and her having funny faces is funny. That's not quirky, that's just modern slapstick. Hot take, King Magnifico looks better looking than Prince Hans. No, you don't have to have a joke about that. You do not have to have a joke about that. I agree. Yeah.
But trust me, Raya still has her adorkable moment.
Again, not adorkable. That's not adorkable. That is just slapstick. And then ModernGurlz starts to make a strange argument using fanfiction, which I'm not too against. Fanfiction is fun, but it also feels like it's completely random and misses the point.
Let's imagine how all of these characters would act in the exact same situation. That's right, we're putting on our fanfiction hats.
Ooh.
The prompt is, they've been kidnapped by a stranger and are tied up in the back of a wagon.
Okay, fanfiction time. That's my favorite hat. I have pre-watched this video, so I kind of know what's going into this, but let's look at Anna and Mirabel getting kidnapped and put into the back of a wagon. I would not say either of them are completely helpless girls, because Anna has spent years locked in the castle in Arendelle, and based off some of the action she was in Frozen 2, I think we could argue that she's more capable with a weapon than Mirabel would be. She's also pretty impulsive, as I discussed earlier. She ran off to get her sister without hesitation, wanted to marry Hans even though they just met, and I can see her impulsiveness surprising her captors enough to give her the edge. I don't see her taking these captors down Mulan style, but I can definitely see her taking more physical action than Mirabel, kind of like Esmeralda is doing right here. Maybe Anna doesn't have the best experience with swords, but I think she has the audacity to try, and I think that might spook her captors a bit. Mirabel, on the other hand, is a lot more creative, I would think. Both girls are obviously physically fit. Just look at how Mirabel saves that miracle candle at the climax of the film, and I think she would use her more creative passions to find a creative way out. Not literally spontaneously sewing a decoy Mirabel of herself to escape, though that would be funny, but she's not really a fighter. She's a quick thinker though, and maybe better with her words than Anna would be. Maybe. I think maybe she would use a spare sewing needle or something in her bag to pick a lock and find, or maybe even find a way to talk her way out, or something to that extent. I love fanfiction writing, it's so fun. I feel like Mirabel would be more willingly to try to peacefully... Yes, Paper. She would probably be more willing to try to peacefully talk it out with these people. Again, I would think she would be a quick thinker. She'd find a way to talk her way out. But she's also physically fit, and I just think it would be funny to imagine her, picking a lock with a sewing needle or something. Huh. ModernGurlz brings up Judy and Moana again, and at this point it's starting to feel a bit repetitive. Button.
Explained. After all, they literally spend the majority of their lives secluded from others. Yeah. But for Moana or Judy, their over-the-top awkwardness and jokester personas don't really make sense for their characters.
They don't have joker personas. Sure, they make a joke every now and again, but jokes are a part of the writing, not the characters themselves. And a character can be funny and make a joke without it being a jokester persona. That's such a weird way to put it.
Only cracking a smile after she succeeded at her task, because that's what would be realistic.
Yes,
Meanwhile,
agree.
When Moana is in a similarly life-threatening situation, she's still cracking unnecessary jokes. Why?
Their boat is turning into more boats!
Not to mention that many of these characters are supposed to exist in different...
No. I mean, two things with this. One, kids' movies nowadays do have considerably more comedy than I think they used to, and that can be a bit problematic sometimes. But also, the scene with Moana is not meant to be taken seriously. The Kakamora are coconut pirates, they're jokes of villains. It's not meant to be taken as seriously as the fight with Mulan that you just described. If you wanted a more accurate comparison between these two scenes, maybe a girl worth fighting for the funny scene with Moana, or the climax as the male soldiers dress up in drag would be a lot more appropriate in comparison between that scene in Moana and the scene in Mulan. And again, the humor is built on slapstick humor, which does look odd in CGI animation, but it's meant to be quirky, and I think the boat turning into more boats is a very reasonable response. I feel like they should have included any characters and retitled the video Modern Disney's Problem with Humor. Yes, I think that would have been a better argument that they could have gone with. I am grading you, ModernGurlz. You are so far getting I'll be generous, I'll give you a B so far. because there are some good arguments I agree with in here, but also don't just center it on the female characters. I think this argument can also work towards the male characters too, and just humor in general. Anyway, where was I with my main point? Moana, the scene in Moana does not accurately compare to the scene in Mulan because they're both taken at different points in their films, and they're both meant to have different themes with them. If we want to compare a more serious fight with in Moana's film, if we even want to call it a fight, the thing she does with Taka at the climax of the movie. So this whole argument just feels really disingenuous to compare these two fight scenes when they're done at different points and for different reasons. Mulan's fight with the Huns is meant to be dramatic. Moana's fight with the Kakamora is meant to be funny. This video is actually starting to get me a little heated, oh my goodness.
And yet, ModernGurlz continues to argue that there are no unique flaws to the modern Disney heroes, as if they're all the same character, which, as I've discussed in my PowerPoint, is not the case.
I've seen people say, they're teenagers, which, like, obviously. But also, that doesn't mean that every 16-year-old has the same personality.
But they don't. Just because you're refusing to recognize the differences does not mean there are no differences. There are differences. This is just a very superficial argument, I think. Because there are differences between these characters if you actually watch and pay attention to the movies. The issue that you're having with these characters is not the characters themselves, but just the humor that is woven throughout the Disney films. And, okay, I hate using this excuse, I really do, but these films are for a child demographic, and, you know, people of all ages can enjoy animated films. You know, people can do whatever they want, but these films are for families and children. Having the characters have these silly and maybe even adorkable moments to make the kids laugh is just what they do nowadays. I don't particularly like it sometimes, but it's just what they do. I think they should change and go back to their sincere movies, but that probably ain't gonna happen anytime soon. It doesn't look good to blame these larger writing issues on one single character quote-unquote archetype you have, when these problems also kind of appear in other films from other studios too. This adorkable personality, you can see it in other movies from, especially Illumination. So this isn't just a Disney problem either. But also, oh my god. I do agree with some of these points, but also, like, most of this video could be made more about Disney's humor than focusing just on the female characters. Okay, so I will give her a point that there are some similarities between the new Disney heroines compared to the older ones, but I would argue that the similarities we see between them are similar to the argument she made earlier between the Renaissance Disney princesses, where kindness, passion, and independence, her argument with that, are all visible in the Disney Renaissance characters. I think some of that has changed to be more of this humorous approach to the ModernGurlz. And kindness, passion, and independence are also visible in our ModernGurlz too, but there's, again, more humor in these films that impacts them differently. And when they have similar-ish backstories, like with Rapunzel, Anna, and Mirabel, there can be some overlap with some of those more socially awkward traits.
And then we make a complete left turn into something else.
But have you noticed that in most Disney movies from the last decade, the female protagonist role in the story is some iteration of, you have to save the blank. It's in Frozen, Moana, Encanto, Raya and the Last Dragon, and now even Wish. It winds up feeling like an overcorrection for the bad faith criticisms of Disney's earlier films where the female characters allegedly didn't do anything, but instead.
What? I need to process this for a second. I mean, the stakes have been getting higher in modern Disney movies because people like action-adventure movies, and I don't think having, like, a plot to save or do something means they're all girl bosses. Yeah, like, I mean, yeah, Paper, it's just slightly higher stakes compared to the old movies. But I mean, like, Mulan was save China. Belle was just save the beast. Jane becomes save the gorillas. So the argument could be used for them as well, too. I just don't think that's another strong argument, and it feels very tacked on and awkward at the end here.
That's the end of the reaction, but I still have a few final thoughts too.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like.
Well, I have many issues with your video, ModernGurlz, but I do agree with a few points. So, I guess if I had to, again, bring up the grading joke, I'd give it a solid C maybe. I just think a lot of the arguments that are made in this video are kind of unrelated to the characters themselves and more the writing and the humor. There are a few outliers in this, like Asha from Wish obviously is a very obviously written Adorkable character, and I haven't even seen the movie. But there are also some good points in there, and I am very curious about her video going into the way feminism impacted the Disney Renaissance. Yeah, there are some flaws in this. I probably would have taken some time to dive deeper into some of these arguments too, because maybe if I had more knowledge on what kind of angle you were trying to go with, maybe I'd understand it a bit more. But again, the refusal to acknowledge the negative personality traits of the modern Disney princesses and heroines, it just seems very superficial.
Are you a hobo?
No,